In this true crime documentary, we uncover the heartbreaking case of Robin and Mani Aldridge. The content you're about to watch has never been shown on YouTube before. Your like and comment are more than enough to keep me searching for true crime documentaries that have never been covered before.
Mani was a very loving, giving, generous kid.
Have a good school year. Bye now.
I don't know as a 17-year-old that Mani wanted to admit that she was having the kind of trouble that she was having.
I'm awesome and I'm still alive and I will talk to you later.
On December 5th, 2014, at 11:47, emergency lines received several calls from residents of Rugby Avenue. They reported a large fire breaking out at house number 1627. Within 2 minutes, a police car that was close to the scene arrived. 3 minutes later, the fire department reached the house, ready to respond. But as smoke filled the sky, one question remained. What would be waiting for them inside once the flames were contained?
Police arrived first, had heavy smoke conditions. Our unit arrived 3 minutes later after the initial call. They had heavy fire conditions on the first floor and smoke on the second floor as well.
According to the fire department report released the following day, it took nearly 1 hour and 25 minutes before crews could enter the first floor of the house. The flames had been that strong. Officers on the scene held on to the hope that no one was inside. Neighbors had mentioned that the car of the woman who lived there was not parked outside, which gave them a moment of relief. That sense of comfort did not last long, because once the team stepped into the house, the first thing they saw was a visible stain on one of the white walls, and in that instant, everything changed. What followed was 72 hours of developments so unusual that investigators would later describe this case as one of the strangest they had dealt with in over 2 decades. Next to the stain was the home security system, leading to an early assumption that perhaps this was a burglary gone wrong. Without hesitation, the search moved upstairs, but the true revelation was not waiting on the second floor. It was hidden below in the basement. By this time, Detective Stephen Kaysen of Charlottesville PD had arrived at the scene, and he would go on to play a central role in piecing this case together. When he learned that the first and second floors were empty, he made his way down the basement stairs, and the first thing that came into view was the body of a woman in her late 50s. Her head covered by her jacket, her body bearing multiple wounds and signs of severe head trauma. Just 7 feet away lay a second body wrapped tightly in a carpet, her feet bound, and her body showing the same signs of repeated strikes and a shattered head. Despite the grim discovery, one thought became clear to Detective Stephen. This was no burglary. The intensity and excess pointed to something driven by raw emotion.
This was an evil and senseless and brutal crime. Robin Aldridge, 58 years old, was a teacher in the Albemarle County school system. Late Friday evening, she was beaten to death in her own home, as was her daughter, 17-year-old Mani. We may want to talk to friends and other persons of interest that may help get a better understanding for what might have led to this horrific tragedy.
The investigators made their plan clear from the very beginning, because a case that looked like it might be driven by emotion could only be solved by understanding the personal lives of those inside the house. The first detail that caught their attention was not even inside. It was the mailbox standing outside the front door. Among the letters was one sent from the University of Virginia Alumni Association, addressed to a man named Gary John Green. That raised the first serious question, because the woman who lived there was Robin Aldridge. So who was this man who had mail delivered to her home? When detectives looked deeper, they learned that Gary John was not just anyone. He was a co-owner of the property and Robin's former husband. Suddenly, new questions surfaced. Could this be about a dispute over the house? Did he want to reconcile and she refused? Or was something else entirely hidden from view? Around 5 in the morning, officers drove to Gary's nearby residence to deliver the devastating news of his former wife's passing and to search for answers. When he heard the words, his reaction was immediate. His shock so raw that questioning him was almost impossible. Yet he insisted on going to the house at once. There he stood still in tears, before calming enough to explain that he and Robin had shared more than a marriage. He had known her since the late 70s, and even after their divorce in 1999, their bond had never disappeared. He remained a close friend to Robin and her adopted daughter Mani, and he admitted he had always thought of Mani as his own, since Robin had brought her home from Ukraine in 2000. When asked why Robin chose to adopt from Eastern Europe He explained that during her high school years, she had traveled there on a trip and fell deeply in love with the culture and the people. After years of struggling to have children of their own and failing, she made the choice to adopt. And in that moment, when she first saw Mani at the orphanage, she knew without hesitation that this little girl was meant to be part of her life.
Oh, I want to take her home.
All right, you can. Ruchka die.
Ruchka die.
Ruchka die, honey. Oh,
Go for a
buddy.
ride?
Мой, Алёша, не катание, бородилет.
Take this. Where am I gonna take it? Gonna bring it over here? There you go.
There you go, mother and daughter outfits.
That's right.
First mother and daughter outfits. Take out their pocketbook.
When detectives spoke with Gary, they were convinced he had no part in what had happened. Yet what they did not know was that he was about to guide them toward an entirely different path. He pointed out that several things were missing from the house. The television was gone. The phones belonging to both Robin and Mani were nowhere to be found. And finally, the car was missing as well. Gary also explained that Robin should have been home around 3 in the afternoon because she never broke her routine. The investigators were shocked because Gary had no idea about the level of violence that had ended Robin and Mani's lives, and what he was describing fit more with a burglary than with a case driven by passion. To solve this puzzle, detectives knew they had to find the missing phones and the car, because once they did, they would be much closer to the truth. On the morning of December 6th, they requested the phone records of both Robin and Mani while waiting for those reports. The autopsy results arrived, and though they confirmed the cause of death, they also added a troubling twist. Mani had died roughly 3 hours before Robin. This meant Mani was already at the house, while Robin was still at work. The question now was simple but heavy. Did Mani skip school that day and stay home, or was there something else entirely? Later that same day, Robin's phone records arrived from the carrier, and they showed she had tried to call Mani repeatedly but received no answer. For detectives, this could only mean one thing. Robin knew Mani was not at school, and she was trying to reach her. That raised new questions. Where exactly had Mani been, and why had she not gone to school without telling Robin? Investigators went to Charlottesville High School for the first of several visits there. They learned Mani had been absent that day without informing her teachers, so they contacted Robin. While a lot of questions about Mani circled their minds, a sudden call shifted the direction of the case. Robin's car had been found just 10 minutes from her home, parked at the Barracks West apartment complex. Detectives rushed to the scene, and though the car offered no phones from either Robin or Mani, a sense of frustration crept in. But one investigator decided to do something that seemed routine, yet would prove crucial. The car was parked near a dumpster, and he chose to take a look inside. There, he found a smashed phone that looked freshly broken. But that was not all beside it, were blood-stained clothes, a distinctive Nike sneaker, orange and black, and several other personal items. In that moment, the decision was made. They would not just recover the items from the dumpster, they would take the entire container for examination.
This is a stock photograph of a shoe that we recovered during the course of our investigation. We believe that the person responsible for this brutal murders and of course, this fire was wearing that shoe at the time.
While the items from the dumpster were already sent to the forensic lab for examination, police developed a theory that the attacker had worn the distinctive Nike shoes and discarded them along with the other belongings. But there were still too many questions, and the answers would only come from looking deeper into the lives of Robin and Mani. At that stage, investigators leaned toward the idea that Robin fit the profile of a passion-driven target. Yet speaking with her closest friends revealed something that changed their perspective entirely. They learned that since adopting Mani in 2000 and separating from her husband, Robin had never dated anyone for 14 years. Her world revolved solely around her daughter and the children with special needs. She dedicated her career to teaching. This revelation shifted the investigation completely. Detectives no longer saw Robin's personal life as the key. Instead, every focus turned toward Mani because hidden within her story lay secrets far darker than anyone expected. Detectives began reaching out to Robin's trusted friends, hoping to understand more about Mani's world, and what they uncovered reshaped everything. They were told that just a year after Robin adopted her daughter, she noticed delays in Mani's development compared to other children her age. It was not severe enough to require special school, but it showed in her struggles with writing and numbers, and because of this, she became a target for bullying at school. Despite these challenges, she was still able to learn, though at a slower pace than her peers. But one fact stood out to investigators. School was never a place she truly felt safe or comfortable.
2 times 9 is?
18, good.
The theory investigators carried with them to the school was that one of the bullies might have crossed a dangerous line. But what they did not expect was that this visit would reveal two secrets about Mani that Robin herself never knew. The first discovery was that Mani had a constant need to connect with her classmates and to build friendships. Yet her behavior in class and her comments toward teachers often made students keep their distance and at times led to her being singled out. In contrast, Mani tried hard to be close to everyone, especially the boys. She often talked about them and tried to get their attention. Robin had spoken to her about the real motive for teenage boys, but detectives learned that Mani's life at school was different from what her mother believed. Months earlier, Robin had found a protective item in Mani's room that was hidden under the bed. In bag written on it, "Remember this." When Robin confronted her, Mani admitted she had spent time alone with a boy named Greg after he invited her to see his guitar, and that it ended with them sharing an experience. Robin confided to Gary that she considered reporting the matter, but eventually stepped back since Greg was the same age as Mani. What Robin never discovered was the second secret. Mani had also been involved with two other students at school. She thought of them as boyfriends, but when investigators questioned the boys, they admitted that while they knew her, they never considered it a real relationship. There was, however, one fact that everyone confirmed. Mani had an extraordinary talent for music, especially on the drums, a detail that would become important later. By the end of the day, investigators concluded that Mani was deeply in need of connection with the opposite sex, and despite Robin's many attempts to guide her daughter toward healthy ways of expressing herself, Mani never fully absorbed her advice, which left her vulnerable to situations that some students, either knowingly or unknowingly, took advantage of. By the end of December 6, detectives were convinced that the school would not give them more answers, and the next step should be to look into Mani's online life, hoping it might point them toward whoever was responsible. What they could not predict was that the following morning, everything would change. On December 7th, Detective Stephen reviewed the photographs of the items pulled from the dumpster, and one detail stood out to him as the key to the puzzle. It was not a single object that caught his eye, but rather the idea that all the stained belongings, along with the distinctive shoes, had been thrown together in the very same dumpster. To Stephen, that meant only one thing. The person who dumped them was familiar with the area and most likely lived nearby. With that thought, he headed straight to Barracks West. His approach was simple. He would knock on every door. Some residents were helpful, while others acted strangely when they saw his badge. Stephen quietly marked the apartments that gave him uneasy feelings, promising himself to follow up later. And then came the breakthrough. One resident had a camera pointed directly at the dumpster. The footage showed a man carrying items, but one thing was clear, even with blurry images: the shoes. The man was walking toward the container, and though the image was grainy, Stephen recognized him immediately. But he was one of the neighbors who had barely opened his door, showing just enough of his face to be noticed. That glimpse had been more than enough. The man had introduced himself to investigators as James, but when police checked with the Barracks West office, they learned his real name was Gene Everett Washington.
Gone. As y'all know, I live copy and B, you know what I mean?
The first thing detectives did once they had Gene's name was run his background, and what they found was that he was still on probation for a theft and assault case dating back to 2004. This made investigators consider that if he was involved, then perhaps the case was simply a burglary. But if that were true, why so many injuries? And why set the house on fire? Gene was placed under surveillance while detectives searched for any possible connection between him and Mani. To do this, they stepped back once more and began combing through both their social media accounts. Mani's profiles revealed another secret she had kept from Robin. She had several interactions with boys and shared inappropriate content with some of them. Yet what detectives really wanted was to find even the smallest sign of contact between her and Gene. At first, nothing appeared on her accounts. Gene's online presence, however, told a different story. He promoted himself as a local rap artist, performing at venues near schools, and detectives considered the possibility that his link to Mani might not be online at all, especially since she loved music. As they dug deeper into his YouTube channel and Twitter feed, they found that Mani had once commented on one of his songs, saying she liked it, and Gene had replied with thanks. But there were no private messages between them, making the situation more complicated. It was not until investigators looked at his Instagram account that they spotted a small detail that changed everything. Jean had posted a picture of Mani's drum set. It could not have come from her page, because she had never uploaded a photo of the drums by themselves. All her pictures showed her actually playing them. This meant Jean had been inside Mani's home at some point. While detectives began to feel certain they had identified their suspect, an unexpected twist came when a woman walked into the police station claiming she had critical information about the case. Her name was Kitty. When she sat down with investigators, she said she believed her husband was involved in what had happened to Robin and Mani. She explained that her husband owned a pair of Nike shoes exactly like the ones police suspected were tied to the case, and when she looked for them in their apartment, they were gone. When she asked him about it, he admitted he had thrown them away. The man she was talking about was her husband and the father of her child, 31-year-old Jean Everett Washington. To the investigators, this was a golden chance to learn how Jean had first crossed paths with Mani. Kitty explained that the connection began in August 2014, about 4 months before the incident. Jean met Mani while filming a music video for his YouTube channel. She told him she loved music and they added each other on Facebook. After that, Jean introduced Mani to others as a friend who supported his rap. But Kitty noticed the relationship did not feel like a normal friendship, especially considering Mani was only 17 and he was 31. Knowing how her husband liked to boast about himself, she worried about what this could mean for their family, especially since they had a child together. She confronted Mani directly and asked her to stay away from Jean. At the time, Jean convinced Kitty that he had stopped talking to her. But when Kitty learned Mani had been killed, she realized the truth was far darker than she had ever imagined. After the interview with Kitty, detectives were preparing the paperwork to place Jean under arrest, but it seemed he was moving faster than they were. The officer assigned to keep surveillance on him discovered that Jean had already violated the terms of his probation and quickly took him into custody. During the search that followed, officers found something that erased all doubts. A phone belonging to Mani was in his pocket.
You're under arrest for these 2 charges of first-degree murder. That's what's going on right now.
No, sir. I need to talk to somebody.
I understand what you're saying, but I'll tell you right now, you're under arrest for these 2 charges. Okay.
I need to talk to somebody ASAP.
How are you saying I killed these people? What are you talking about? I never killed nobody in my life. I never even harmed nobody. You don't even know these people. I haven't even heard of them.
Jean insisted he did not know Mani or Robin and immediately asked for an attorney, which brought the questioning to a halt. But what he did not realize was that within 11 months, he would confess in a recorded call. On December 8, 2014, just 72 hours after the investigation began, he was officially charged with the capital offense related to Robin Aldridge, the second-degree charge related to Mani Aldridge, and arson for setting their Rugby Avenue home ablaze. From that moment, the focus of detectives shifted toward collecting enough evidence to present in court, and the first step was obtaining a search warrant for his residence. Inside, they found the stolen television from Robin's home. But what truly shocked Robin's family and friends was the revelation that Mani's connection to Jean had been completely hidden. No one knew about it. They were really shocked when they knew that the accused man turned out to be the darkest secret in Mani's life. Detectives now needed to piece together a theory of what had taken place. And the first step was proving that Mani and Jean had been in contact. That proof had been in front of them from the very beginning. Mani's phone records showed 81 calls exchanged with Jean between September and October of 2014. After that, the calls became less frequent. Another detail stood out. The bag found under Mani's bed with the words, "Remember this" written on it. Detectives believed it was more in line with Jean's boastful personality than with a teenage boy her own age. Based on the autopsy report, showing Mani had died 3 hours before Robin, investigators constructed their theory of events. On December 4th, 2014, Jean slipped into the Aldridge home and was surprised to find Mani inside. He ended her life in fear and attempted to conceal her body by wrapping it in a carpet and binding her feet. While he was doing this, Robin arrived home and he ended her life as well. Afterward, he set the house on fire and fled around 7:30, taking Robin's car and her phone, which he later smashed before throwing it into the dumpster, where he was caught on camera at 7:57. While everyone was still reeling from the details presented by officers before the rest of the evidence could even be introduced in court, Jean continued to deny everything. For more than 11 months, he claimed the entire case was fabricated against him, that he was innocent, and that he had never known Mani or had any connection to her at all. But while he was being held at Sussex, a state prison in Waverly, Virginia, authorities recorded a call.
You were having sex with a 17-year-old, A 17-year-old.
Would you still love me?
Just tell me the truth.
You know.
Did you have sex with her?
I'm telling
Did you have sex
so
with
many words.
Tell me yes or no.
Yes.
After being confronted with the recorded call, along with the rest of the evidence, in June 2016, Jean Everett Washington entered what is known as an offered plea. For those unfamiliar, an offered plea is a type of guilty plea where the defendant does not admit to committing the act itself, but accepts that the evidence is strong enough to convict them and agrees to the sentence. Through this agreement, Jean was formally charged, and the case came to its conclusion with a sentence of life in prison plus 40 years. In the end, Robin Aldridge lived her entire life with one purpose: to give love and guidance to her daughter and to the children with special needs. She poured her energy into creating a safe world where care and compassion came first. Mani was the center of that world, a girl who, despite her struggles in school, carried a passion for music and a longing to belong. Yet that same longing was what drew the attention of a manipulative man who saw her vulnerability and used it for his own gain. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more true crime documentaries. See you in the next video.